Pregnancy emotions are no joke. But what if I told you they weren't here just to make your life suck? They can actually be your superpower. Hey, I'm Julia, and if you don't know me, I'm brand new to YouTube, but I am a therapist, I'm a mom to two, and I've been an emotional and kind of sensitive person my whole life. And not in that kind of falling apart, my life is always a mess, dramatic way, but at least I like to think, but in a empathic, tuned in, I feel fully alive and feel all the feels kind of way. And what I want to do today is really help you reframe this crazy experience of pregnancy and these ups and downs that are probably unlike anything else you've ever experienced, and really figure out how to harness those emotions to be the superpower that they are so that you can be an even more amazing version of yourself, which means you'll be an even more amazing mom to the precious little baby that you're growing inside you. So let's jump in. Pregnancy emotions are probably unlike anything you've ever experienced before. And that's because of our hormones, right? Our hormones are at levels that they've never been before. And so it affects our emotions. And also, there's just the intensity of the experience that we're going through and the highs and lows. And if you've been through any kind of journey toward this pregnancy, if you've had any kind of losses along the way, and even if you haven't, it's like, you're waiting week by week to see what happens. And it can bring up fear, anxiety, and then the highs are so high and the lows are so low. One minute you're literally sobbing over some kind of like puppy meme or something like that. And the next minute you are launching a pillow across the room at your partner because they pissed you off so much. Or hopefully that's not just me. But seriously, it's like we go from 0 to 60 like that. And it can be really stressful and hard and frustrating, and it feels like we're going crazy and difficult. And I'm not trying to deny any of that by talking about emotions as a superpower. I know it can be hard, but there's this whole other side to our emotions in pregnancy that no one really looks at. And that's what we're going to see today. And it's really going to charge up your experience of pregnancy and turn this whole emotional mess into emotional power. There are two main ways that I want to talk about today that you can use your emotions in pregnancy to really supercharge your life. Number one, pregnancy is actually an amazing time to build your toolbox around emotional regulation. What is emotional regulation? Well, it is our ability to work with our emotions and work with our body when our feelings get really big and overwhelming. We can bring ourselves down to a calmer place where we can get our thinking brain back online. Because when our emotions are heightened and activated, when we're in fight or flight mode, we actually can't think. And that is not helpful for us in our day-to-day life. It's not helpful for us in pregnancy, but it is especially unhelpful in parenting, because parenting gets on our nerves. Our kids get on our nerves, the pressure, the stress, the lack of sleep. And so having some tools to build our capacity to regulate our emotions, to bring ourselves to a place of calm and clarity when we need it, can be extremely, extraordinarily helpful. And those kinds of tools are things like deep breathing. It sounds simple, but actually taking just 3 deep breaths can start to shift our emotional state and can help us feel a little bit more grounded and more calm. Another example are things like going out into nature, and that can be really tiny. Even just stepping outside of the door, breathing some fresh air, looking around, looking at a tree, looking at the sun, that can all be helpful. Also doing small things to shift our body's state. So drinking a glass of water or some tea, maybe stretching, feeling your feet on the floor. Even doing things like just looking around at the space, taking your attention out of whatever intense emotion is overwhelming you and back into the present. That's really what emotional regulation is all about. And in a future video, I'm going to be going more in depth into some great tools for emotional regulation. One of the tools I also really like, I will be doing a video on this, but you can also find them all over YouTube. It's a tool called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. And that is a great, very active, simple thing that you can do that can help your body calm down when your emotions are feeling really intense. So while feeling really emotional in pregnancy is totally normal and is very, very healthy, there are times when it's just not that helpful. And so, having these emotional regulation tools that you can start practicing in pregnancy and then bring with you into motherhood and for the rest of your life, or if you're already a mom, bring it into your family with your kids, with your spouse if you have one. This can be an excellent way to use the heightened emotionality of pregnancy to actually build tools that you really need to have in motherhood. The second tool that I'm going to talk about is about using these emotions for deeper healing. So, while sometimes what we really need to do when we have strong emotions is regulate and calm down, and we can practice that and we can become really excellent at that capacity to do that. On the other hand, it can be easy every time we have an emotion to just try to calm down, regulate that emotion, and move on. However, number one, that doesn't always work. And even if it works in the moment, if there's something deeper that's going on, it is going to keep coming up because our system wants to move toward wholeness and it wants to move toward healing. So if we don't heed the call when some of these emotions come up and try to kind of, I think of it as like a little kid who's kind of tugging on your pants or your shirt, and then you shoo them away because it's not the right moment, but they come back. They're very persistent. And so the second piece here is really about emotional healing. And even though our emotions in pregnancy are heightened because of our hormones, it doesn't mean that the things that we are feeling are baseless or they're only hormonal or it's just because we're pregnant. In fact, most of the time, the things that we're upset about, the things we're feeling grief about, the things we're feeling angry about, have their roots in something that is legitimate. And it could be something that's legitimate in your life. It could be that you're feeling angry and maybe there's a boundary that's been crossed or a boundary you need to set that you haven't been setting. But it also may be that the emotion you're feeling is rooted in the past, in something really deep that needs to be healed. And so it's actually a gift that this emotion is coming up to the surface because these opportunities for healing allow us to become more whole, to step more fully into being the people we want to be, and as I said earlier, into the mothers we want to be for our children. So it's not every moment that you're able to kind of do a deep dive into your emotions. As we all know, sometimes they come at very inconvenient times. But if you have a little bit of time and space when you're feeling really emotional, when you're feeling that sadness, you don't even know where it came from, and you just need to cry, you can consider doing some things that will actually help you kind of dive in and then emerge with some amount of healing or some amount of clearing of that emotion in a way that can be very powerful. And I will have a video also going into more depth about this, but I'm going to throw a few things out. One thing I want to say is that therapy is amazing for this. I am a therapist, so I'm a big fan of therapy. But it's also really important, especially with how volatile things can feel in pregnancy, that we have tools that we can use in the moment. And therapy is usually once a week, and it is not necessarily at like 11 o'clock at night when you can't sleep and you find yourself just beyond words and you're totally distraught. You can't just call your therapist. So, here are a few ideas of ways that you can deepen and do some healing at this really potent emotional time. Number one, journaling. Journaling can be an amazing tool for getting to really dive in and explore the feelings that are coming up for you. And I include in that not just written journals, but also art journals, if that's your thing, and giving yourself space to just explore the feelings as they come up and to free write without any kind of editing, any kind of judgment. If you feel like there's maybe a part of you that's up, and if you've done any kind of therapy around parts work, this might be familiar to you. You can even have a conversation with that part of you. Or if you've done any work on your inner child, you can notice, is there a young part that you can connect with and listen to? And journaling can be a great format for that. Also, EFT tapping, which I mentioned earlier, has different aspects to it. And while on the one hand, it can be great at emotional regulation and helping you calm down, it can also be used really profoundly for deep healing, and it can move you through emotion. And sometimes the emotion can get more intense along the way, but as you move through it and you keep tapping and you keep going, it is incredible the kinds of beliefs that you can shed and the kinds of healing that can happen through that process. So that's something, if you haven't tried it before, I highly encourage. You might have your own ways of feeling your feelings. I personally love to use music as a way to kind of create a container for me to cry, to rage, to let myself feel fear. And Rachel Kaplan has the feelings movement. I'm going to have her information linked below. She is all about feeling your feelings and letting them move through you. And she calls it emotional potty training, I think. She's still using that terminology. She's someone you can look into. Any way that you have to really allow emotions to discharge, to move through, and to then get to really feel the opening that happens on the other side can be incredibly powerful. And all of the practices I mentioned so far are things that you can do by yourself. But if you have someone in your life, whether it's your partner or a friend or family member, that you can really let all your feelings out with, do that with them. It can be great to be witnessed and to have someone who can hold space for you. You can even talk with them. You can share this video and let them know that as you're going through these intense emotions, you're really trying to make space for some healing that can happen. And they can hold space for you, and then you can take a turn also and hold space for them, whether they're having big feelings or not. As a mom, being in touch with your own emotions is such a game changer, because that's a huge part of what our kids need from us, especially when they're first born, but actually also throughout their whole life. Emotional attunement is what creates the kind of attachment that we want to have with our children. And it's also what helps them start to be able to get to know their own emotions and have a healthy relationship with their emotions. The more you're able to relate to your own emotions in a way that feels empowering, that lets them move through you, that makes space for them, that doesn't shame them, the more you're going to be able to do this with your kids. I do want to say, I know that pregnancy is really hard, and everyone has a different experience of pregnancy. You might have gotten a really crappy hand dealt to you, and you're feeling nauseous and sick all the time. And don't be hard on yourself about it. Some of the tools I mentioned you can use even when your energy is low. But here's the thing. Pregnancy does not have to be something that you just get through. And the things I mentioned here are not about adding more stuff to your to-do list. You're already feeling all of these emotions. So it's really about how to work with them in a way that's going to actually make you feel better in the end, and is going to set you up for having an easier and better and more growthful time postpartum and into motherhood, and help you fully step into the person that you are and the mother that you really want to be. So I just want to honor you for all you're doing. And if you haven't listened to it yet, there is a Love Letter to Moms meditation. It's about 5 minutes long right here on the channel. And really do yourself a favor and listen to it. It is such a expression of gratitude for all of the beautiful work that you're doing in pregnancy.